The Datalogic, that's right now, it's sort of in a sleep mode here for me. We see that obviously dark screen here. On the side of the Datalogic, on the left-hand side here, you'll see that there are volume buttons, and then there is also this button here. In the quick guide material that was shipped with the Datalogic, there is also an explanation around all these buttons. So here, if you see, if I hit that, then the screen comes alive. So I hit that side, the screen comes alive here. And just like any Android device here, we may have other things, other notifications, other tasks that you may see on the screen here that may or may not, again, apply, or really that you need to worry about. The device also can be set up to be locked with a password. I think it also does the option of like finger movement across, and some different options there as well. So that may be another item as well to be conscious of if you're using the device that may have been set up with the security on the device. My particular device does not have that. I've let it be open without any security here. So as soon as it's on, I can swipe up just like I did there to move past the notification screen and into the main desktop of the device. What we're seeing here is, again, very similar maybe to a mobile phone that you may be used to. We have a search bar at the top. We have apps then on the home page, and we have additional apps that become available to us if we swipe up or click on the up arrow there associated to the apps. Now this, again, Datalogic device has a lot of features and functionalities that may be even beyond what we immediately use it for our scanning. And so you will see it is loaded with other applications already on the device that we see here. Our particular application that we're looking for, typically when it's installed, it will be found then along the bottom. If you scroll down to the bottom of this list, and the app name that we're looking for is this one right here called TABTracking. So it's this one right here that I just covered up with my phone or with my finger here in the middle. So to launch the app, you'll simply just click on it, and it should launch our app like this. If you have not launched the app at all previously, there may also be some options that pop up. I believe Google Security may have a prompt the very first time where you can decide to have Google Security monitor the app or not. Again, that is really your choice. It won't change any functionality for us. All right. So now that we've launched the app and we're actually inside of the app here, by default, the app opens to our options area within the application. And we can have certain defaults already set that you may see on your side. So if I kind of make this look a little bit maybe closer to yours, I would think yours may look like this, where our default setting is to have an unlock setting, and we would not have any information in any of these following text boxes. The options that are presented in this screen have to do with how the app responds, how it works when we scan different types of barcodes, meaning destination barcodes versus object barcodes, whether or not there are due back days set for checked out items or checked out transactions, as well as potentially managing or having settings around the barcode formats themselves. And in particular, when we say barcode formats, we're talking about any prefix or suffix masks that may exist in those barcodes. We'll come back around to most of these options a little bit later as they relate to actually scanning activity. So we'll kind of put a pin in most of this for the moment. But the one I will call out right away is this user ID field. So because this device is working offline, it's an offline device, meaning that there's no live connection to the application, to the Fusion application. Because of that, what we can look to do is provide on the application itself what the user ID is associated to the transactions being captured. In other words, when we load these transactions into Fusion, who do we want to tag or associate to those transactions? That's what this user ID text box here is for. We'll see how this actually gets captured as well when we do some transactions. I'll point out where we can see this. In terms of what you would want to populate here, we've seen customers use this in a couple of ways depending on your business needs or requirements. So one of the ways that we've seen it used is to actually identify the named user who's doing the transaction, right? So if you are sharing a scanner across different users and you want to know which user was the one who actually completed the scan on the device itself, then as part of a business process, you could ask your users to populate this user ID with their particular Fusion RMS username each time they utilize the app or each time they start a new scanning batch. That again is if you really want to capture it down to a specific named user. The other way that we've seen this used is to more capture the device itself. So if you'd like to know that the transaction came from the particular Datalogic, then you can give your Datalogic a name. If you only have one of them, it could be as simple as just saying Datalogic Memor or just Datalogic, whatever again works for you in terms of identifying the device. If you have more than one Datalogic device, then you may want to name them more uniquely if, again, you're trying to use this to capture the source device rather than the named user. So for this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use sort of like a named user approach. And for us, most of our demonstration here, we'd be using the standard administrator account for ourselves here. Again, you may use more of a named user approach or a device name approach. Again, your choice there. When you populate this value on the options screen, then we will see that when we switch over to the main area where we actually scan, then that setting or that option will carry forward for us. So to actually go to the area of the app where we will scan, we're going to hit we call this a hamburger menu icon in the top left. And when you click on that, then you'll see the other areas of the app that you can navigate to. In this particular example, then, we're going to move to the tracking area, which is where we will actually complete or scan our transactions. And here we can see that this very top box pre-populated then with the user ID based upon my options setting. Here we also see we have two other text boxes. We have one for the destination and one for the object. So of course, we're going to be populating these by scanning barcodes for each destination and object transaction. We also get a summary of counts of how many transactions have been completed on the device and that have not been uploaded yet to Fusion. And then here we see information about the last item scanned. And of course, it's empty for me because I don't have any items scanned at the moment. So let's start talking about actually scanning then. So the first thing we'll just want to be a little bit conscious of, and normally when you move to the screen, by default, the cursor will be here, but you'll want to be conscious of it before you start scanning, is that your cursor is where you're going to be scanning to. So typically we always scan the destination barcode first. That's why it's first in the order here. And so we want to make sure our cursor is there. So it is there. We can see it's a little red flashing cursor there. So now that we're here, we can actually scan our first destination barcode. And for that, I have some sample barcodes. So I'm going to just put the scanner down for a moment, and I'll show you what I have. So here I have a 8.5 by 11 page of some different location barcodes. This is for a demonstration environment that we have here. So of course the locations and the descriptions of the locations may not line up with what you have on your end. But again, from a flow perspective, from a task perspective, all of this should still align for you. So I have one here. Actually, these are locations for me. I mentioned the idea of prefixes and masks. These barcodes in particular are using a mask. It's the L value, and the L value is indicating that these are location barcodes for my particular solution. I have a similar type of sheet, but for employees rather than locations, and that is here. And here you'll see we have a similar type of setup, but for these we have a different prefix now. We have an E rather than the L, again indicating that it's an employee barcode rather than a location barcode. So with this being said, let's go ahead and actually scan now. Again, if it goes to sleep, you can just wake it up, swipe up, and you'll be right back where you were. And now that we're ready to go, let's go ahead and scan. So the barcode scanner on this device, it's located at the top. I'll be careful here not to shoot myself in the eyes, but it's right there at the top there. And the button to execute the or trigger it is the one on the right here, this button right here. All right, so that's the button we're going to use. If you'll see, if I scan even just kind of press it against the wall, you'll see it kind of lights up there, and I have my crosshairs in motion there on the wall. Now, the other thing I'll just point out quickly is if your cursor is not in a barcode scanning area and you click that scan button, you'll notice that you won't get a response. So I just moved the cursor back up to the user ID field, and now you'll see when I press the button, we're not getting any response from the laser. So that's another way. If you notice, you're pressing the button and nothing's happening, take a look at where your cursor is or where you've selected in the app, because it's likely that that's the cause there. All right, so now let's go ahead and scan. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of pick this up, and we'll just scan on one here. I'll just go ahead into my pension and benefit location here, and there we go. We got a scan. Now, I don't know if we'll do more scans here, so you'll get a chance to see it again. But you may have heard that the scanner beeped, and the other thing it did was the laser switched to a green circle. So those are the indications as a user that the scan has completed and was successful. We also can see on the device here now that the destination barcode has been populated with the particular barcode that I scan, and that the cursor has automatically moved down for us to the object barcode area. So it's now that we can scan our object. And for those, I have some sample Tab Quick color label designs. So here is some samples of a Tab Quick label design. It really, again, doesn't matter what design you're using, even if it's not Tab Quick, if it's just a black and white, not a big deal. Of course, we're really just looking in this instance for the barcodes. So here you'll see I have barcodes, of course, on these as well, representing the files. And for this instance as well, actually, you'll see I have another prefix here for an F representing a physical file. So let's go ahead and scan that now as well. And we'll scan a few here. So we scan the first one there, and now if you'll see, our screen has updated to give us one item has been scanned, and we get the details of that scan. So we get the destination barcode, the object barcode that was scanned, what was the date and time of the scan. That is, of course, captured from the device itself. The user ID, which is, of course, the user ID we entered on the option screen, and it carried forward here. And then there's two other fields down here that really don't apply to this particular transaction, a due back date and a reconciliation type. So reconciliation is an additional sort of more advanced option for scanning where the reconciliation scans don't actually update the system. You're just scanning to then reconcile or compare the transactions against the system. It's sort of more of an audit mode rather than an update mode. Today, we'll focus on the update mode, which is, of course, the core functionality of using the app. So we'll leave reconciliation from this point on today. Due date, again, applies to the idea that you check out an object. And because I transferred to a location rather than, let's say, an employee, there's no due back date for this transaction. So again, that's why that was left blank there. So you'll see here, now the destination barcode and the object barcode both cleared out. So we can continue with the following another scan. So at this point, again, I could go ahead and scan another location. And now that I've scanned that location, I could go ahead and scan a file. And now I have 2 items scanned. You can always delete your last scan directly from this screen as well. So if you scan, complete a transaction and in reviewing the last item scan details here, you realize that there's an issue with that particular transaction. Maybe it was a misscan. Maybe you scanned the wrong barcode by accident. Maybe you scanned the same file twice in a row. Then you can go ahead and delete that transaction directly from here, and you'll see that the information will update. If you scan a barcode and realize you scanned the wrong one, let's say I did that and I realized, you know what, that's the wrong location. Again, I scanned the wrong one. Then you can click back into that row there so that you can see it. And you can backspace it out by clicking on the keyboard icon here to bring up your keyboard at the bottom. And that will give you all the keyboard input. So theoretically, you could manually actually adjust the barcode as well. Maybe I didn't mean to do 923. I actually meant 927. Then I can make that manual adjustment there if I wanted, or I could just backspace the whole value out and rescan. Clicking on the keyboard again will toggle that back off. So you can toggle that keyboard on and off as you need. So we've gone through sort of the basic, pretty standard, straightforward approach to scanning. Scan our destination, scan our object. We can see the results. We can delete the last item scan. We can modify our entry values if we need to, if there was an issue there. So now what I would like to do is actually talk a little bit about options, about how you can use the option settings in the app to maybe make your scanning even more efficient and a better process for you. So with that being said, what I want to call to your attention before we move away from the screen again is that every time I scanned and the scan was then successful, my destination and my object cleared so that I needed to rescan both. That being said, we often understand that if you're doing barcode scanning, you often are putting more than one object into the same destination, right? If you're putting files into boxes, you're going to scan a box and then scan multiple files into that box. If you're moving boxes into a warehouse, same kind of thing, and so on and so forth. If you're checking out files or boxes to an employee because of a request, again, you may be doing that more in bulk with multiple objects going to the same employee as the destination. So in those instances, we do have an option to switch how the app is working so that you can have a more efficient process. So to do that, I'm going to click back up on here and go back over to our options area of the application. And now that we're here, I'm going to bring your attention to the top radio button options here around the destination and around the ability to have it be unlock, lock, hold, and detect. So unlock is the behavior that we've been seeing so far today, which is every time a scan is completed, then we clear out the destination and the object so that you must rescan both. Again, this ensures the greatest accuracy, that you don't end up scanning something to the wrong spot because you sort of didn't realize you needed to update the destination. But as I also said, it does mean it's sort of the slowest or the most scan activity type of approach. So the next option we'll look at is lock. So I'm going to switch my radio button to lock, clicking that option instead. There's no save button or anything here. As soon as you make the change here, it's immediately in place, and then you can just move back over to the other screen. So we'll go ahead, and I have it now on lock, and with it on lock, then we'll do some scans so that we can see how that will behave. So I'll bring back up my location barcodes here, and I'm going to go ahead and scan one of those locations there. And there we go. That's just as normal, just as it's been through all of our examples here so far today. I'll go ahead and scan a file now. There we are. So now you'll see the last item scanned has been updated to the scan I just did. But instead of both of our text boxes up here clearing, only the object barcode cleared. We kept the destination in place, and our cursor has stayed in the object barcode area. And what that allows us to do then is to continue scanning multiple objects quickly and efficiently to the same destination. So now I can just keep going like this, and I've scanned very quickly all items into that same location. Of course, you still may want to change your destination. Maybe I've just filled up that location. I've filled up that box, and now I want to go on to something else. So in those instances, again, you can go ahead and put your cursor back into the other row, clear it out, and then you can go ahead and scan your new destination. So when you're done using the app, if you were just done for the day, but you weren't ready to actually upload the data, you just wanted to close the app. When you click here, there's two options here, and we'll talk about more of these as well. But there's two options. There's one option to download and exit, which is a step that we'll do when we're actually uploading the data to Fusion. Or the other option is if you just want to close the app, then you'll just choose the exit, and that'll just close the app. So I went ahead and just exited the app there. So it's closed completely. Let's go ahead and reopen it. And you'll notice that my operator, my user ID is still there in place. And if we go over to the options, you'll notice that the options have stayed as well. So we do keep all these options on the device. The only time they would likely go away is if there was a full cold reboot of the and reset of the device itself. So now that I'm on the screen, let's go ahead and talk about the last option, which is hold and detect. And when I do that, we'll notice that actually a few other things then become editable further down in this screen around the prefix, suffix, and then the custom prefixes. So this one is probably easier for me to demonstrate first, and then we can talk about the setup a little bit after. So I'm going to demonstrate it first so that we can kind of see how it works, and then I think that will help to explain a little bit of the logic choice on the admin or on the options side. So here, let's go ahead and scan again. I'm going to scan a location, a destination first. So there we go. I scanned my location. This time it's location 731. And now I'll go ahead and scan an object, a file. And here you'll see it's basically acting as if we have it in lock, right? Where it kept my destination here, so I can just keep scanning my objects. Where this setting gets a little bit even smarter and can be a little bit more efficient is when you need to switch to a new destination. We no longer have to go into this this text box and manually delete it out. Instead, what I'll show you is if I scan, so I scanned one file to this location, and now let's say I actually want to scan to a different location now. Even though my cursor is in the object barcode field, I'm still going to go ahead and scan a location. And what you'll notice there is that what it actually did for me was it didn't add any new transaction, because of course a location can't go into another location. But what it did was it detected that this barcode I scanned was actually a new destination and not an object. So you'll see that the actual destination row updated to the new location, even though I scanned it in the wrong spot. So that's the idea there with that. Hold and detect. Now, the detect piece then is where our options come in. And again, I don't want to get too kind of in the weeds here and kind of get ourselves too confused. But when we do hold and detect, we need to tell the app what prefixes we use so that it knows what is considered a destination, basically. So here at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the custom prefixes on my app, and I believe this will be the default setting on your app as well, is that we have custom prefixes already in here for L, E, and B. Those are, again, the standard or sort of the default prefixes that Fusion typically uses for locations, employees, and boxes. Now, this is typically the default, but this is also a configuration choice on Fusion. So you may or may not actually use prefixes in your barcodes. You may or may not actually use these exact prefixes if you use prefixes at all. And that's something we could review on your Fusion side if we needed to confirm the proper settings to use for this setting in your environment. If you were to use any different prefixes, let's say you didn't use E for employees, maybe you used a P because you used it more as, say, personnel, then that's where you could click into this box and make the modifications to the prefixes that the application uses. Okay. If I was to remove these prefixes entirely, then the whole detect change would not function, because it is this setting that is telling Fusion when it reads the barcode, consider that a destination, not an object. So just as a bit of a final note then on these settings and sort of general recommendations that I would make for three of these options are, of course, supported options, very good options, and have their own strengths and strengths and weaknesses, or pros and cons, or things to be aware of. As users get comfortable with the app, then you would sort of move left to right in the options, right? If you're just starting out with the app and you want to make sure that you're not scanning objects to an inadvertent wrong destination, then you may want to start with just using the unlock setting, right? So that you're scanning a destination and object every time, being very specific about what you're doing. Then as you get more comfortable, you realize you want to have better efficiency, you're doing more scanning of multiple objects to the same destination, then we would highly recommend you move to the lock. And then finally, if it applies to you, you could look at the hold and detect if you're using those prefixes as well. Okay. So I just moved back over to the main part of the barcode tracking app now. And the sort of the last area that I'd like to discuss specific to directly within the app here today is about is reviewing and potentially deleting the transactions. So we talked already about how the last scan is shown right here for us. And we can delete that one right away by clicking on the delete button. But if you want to review all the transactions that are on the device, in this case, I have 9 of them, then we can do that by clicking on the menu here and going to the tracking list instead of tracking. And this will give you a full running list here of all the transactions on the device. So here on the main screen, it will tell you just what the destination and the object was for the transaction. But if you click on it, it will give you the further information, and it will give you that option to delete the specific transaction if you need. So this is another way where you can go through and kind of get rid of certain things, or if you realize that you scanned something 2 times in a row by accident, then again, you can go ahead, come in here and remove those transactions that no longer need to be there.